thank you for listening and tuning in to a little introductory talk about dental health in your pets. So this is something that we are all aware we need to do for ourselves. We religiously clean our teeth twice a day. So with our pets being pretty similar to us, having teeth very similar to us, how do we manage to look after our pets' teeth, and how which products work, and just basically trying to work our way through all of the products that are available for toothbrushing, and really to understand why it's really so important. When I was in practice, seeing dogs and cats with really dirty teeth was so common, and it results in the need for an anaesthetic to have the teeth clean. So we might visit the hygienist when our teeth are actually probably not anywhere near as bad as those cats and dogs were, and have half an hour scale and polish, which isn't much fun, but if we do that once a year, we keep our mouths in pretty good health. Well, our dogs and our cats won't lay there while we put an ultrasound scaler on them. It's quite comfortable. So we have to give them a general anaesthetic, and then they're often under for quite a long period of time. Sometimes we need to do extractions. It's quite a traumatic experience to have. Your older animal often go through that because obviously the kind of dental hygiene kind of can deteriorate over time. And so sometimes these dogs and cats are often quite old, and having to put them through an anaesthetic to clean their teeth is something that we really want to avoid if we can. And obviously there's a financial cost to that too. The bill can run into hundreds, up to 1,000, and there are specialists that will do fillings and things like that now. So you're really looking at this is something you really want to make sure you're on top of, and you're doing the right thing for your particular pet. So coming back, I always come back to what would happen in the wild, right? So we don't see cats and dogs or foxes or wild ancestors of our pets with their toothbrushes twice a day. So do they get dental disease? Perhaps they do, we just don't know. How do they manage? It's a really good question, and really through observation and trialing different diets over the years, we've really come to try and understand how to maintain oral health in our pets. And actually looking at the zoo industry is a really interesting one as well, because obviously they have the same issue where they're kind of captive animals, but they can't be cleaning the leopard's teeth twice a day, so which sometimes your domestic cats might turn into when you try and clean their teeth. So how do we manage all this, and what out there is really worth the money and what isn't? When it comes to diet, it's really important to understand some of the marketing myths around it. There are some diets, and many diets and chews out there that claim to benefit oral health, and it's worth just taking a minute to understand before you spend lots of money on something that isn't particularly that effective. Oral health, if we focus on that first, which is what we're trying to achieve, means clean teeth, healthy non-inflamed gums. Often owners will say that their dogs have bad breath, and that can absolutely come from dirty teeth, but it can also come from further down into the stomach. So if they haven't got particularly healthy gut flora, microbiome, etc., then you can find that the smelly breath can come from that. It's not always the teeth. So get somebody to have a look in your dog or cat's mouth to just make sure that you understand what the situation is at the moment. No veterinary nurse should be able to do that at your local practice, no problem. So we're talking about oral health, as I say, no inflammation, no tartar, no plaque on the teeth, and no sensitivities, no abscesses, that sort of thing. And when we're looking at optimal health in any kind of organ, really skin, digestive system, we probably have heard me talk before about the microbiome, and how important that is to maintain healthy skin, healthy organ systems, and healthy digestive system. Well, your mouth also has a microbiome. So there are many beneficial bacteria in our digestive tract, which includes our mouth, which is really important in reducing plaque, keeping the correct acidity, helping the enzymes work, and that all helps to reduce inflammation and to build up plaque and tartar. There's quite a lot of information in people on this, and as of yet, there isn't an oral probiotic for dogs. Teeth specific, there are for people, and they have actually identified specific bacteria that are beneficial, particularly in helping the oral microbiome. So we're looking at just feeding a general probiotic to your dog, full stop, because if you feed a broad spectrum probiotic and fresh foods, you are going to help the oral microbiome and help the acidity and help keep those beneficial bacteria there doing their job, stopping inflammation and the build-up of plaque and tartar. So that's a really important, it's worth a Google to see what's around, and it all applies to people too. And we know from our visits to our dentist that if we shouldn't eat sugar. In that kind of environment with sugar hanging around the mouth really encourages kind of opportunistic pathogenic bacterial growth. So keeping to like fresh foods is really important. Something as well that we don't talk about very much with us, but is really relevant, is like the kind of texture of foods that we eat. So even if you go back to what we would be eating naturally, like crunching on apples, crunching on carrots, all of that crunching is quite abrasive to our gums and our teeth, and that action is actually quite cleaning. That's what you're doing with a toothbrush, or just, soft abrasion on the tooth surface and the gum where it sits, the gingival area where it sits on the teeth, really helps to keep them healthy. And so, we need to replicate that in our dogs, and if they're eating very soft food and we're eating very soft food, then you don't get that kind of abrasive action happening also to help clean the teeth. So dogs and cats will eat prey items, and they will often chew on carcasses and bones, and that in itself is very effective at removing plaque and getting rid of that kind of. It's actually really interesting. I have a vet friend who she's a locum, so she works for different practices, and often a practice policy is to recommend a dental, but she might suggest to them on the quiet, go and buy yourself a raw bone for £2.50, give it to your dog once a week for half an hour, come and see me in 6 weeks, and then we'll see whether your dog still needs a dental or not. And more often than not, it does actually remove what's already there, which is amazing. So all we're doing when we're doing a dental procedure is we often crush off those large pieces of tartar, and that's just something that's happening naturally when your dog will chew on something that's really abrasive. Not everyone is okay with raw bones, I understand that, but we'll look at some other options. And there has been a study on that. There has been a study on the shape of bones and the knuckle ends with their kind of different surfaces and different shapes and corners is actually more effective than chewing on a marrow bone, which is much smoother. So there is some research on that. And it's not only because we want to keep our teeth healthy, and clean and nice, and it's very much more sociable to have a good healthy oral microbiome. But actually, there's quite a lot of systemic issues that can come from having inflamed gums and bacteria sitting in that gum inflammation area, because it's a way of entering the body, it's a way of entering the bloodstream. And in particular, things like kidney disease are related to poor oral hygiene. There's several research papers on that in people, definitely. So it's really, there's a link with heart disease. It's really kind of important in the prevention of health issues, certainly later in life, to have a really healthy mouth. It's actually probably more important than you may have realised. So dogs would naturally keep their teeth cleaned by chewing on carcasses and eating fresh, species appropriate foods. So can we replicate that at home is the question. So for those of you who are raw feeders, then that might be pretty simple. When we're talking about dental hygiene and chewing, we want your dog to be chewing for half an hour, something like that, on something that's pretty tough, hard. You don't want, so some of the more popular dental treats are very soft, and they're eaten in a matter of a minute. So I'm not entirely sure how they market their action as being particularly positive, and there's certainly some of the ingredients are certainly not beneficial for the oral microbiome. So we need to try and encourage your dog to chew on something. And now raw feed, as I say, have been really quite straightforward for you if you're able to feed raw bones. We're not talking about really necessarily chicken wings or duck wings or those sort of smaller bones that are kind of crunched and swallowed, but actually what we call recreational bones, which are the knuckle end or the femoral head of the cow, are really, really good at entertaining your dog. I'm a massive fan in terms of mental enrichment. But they will keep your dog occupied for hopefully quite a long time if they're motivated to go outside and chew on a raw meaty bone. As I say, you only really need to do it if you're maintaining a clean mouth once or twice a month for half an hour, and that will take off anything that's building up there. And keep your dog's teeth really clean. It's the one of the top things that you hear vets say when they have older dogs come in and their teeth are really clean and they're so surprised. I have a 12-and-a-half-year-old dog and his teeth are absolutely spotless. He actually only has a bone once every couple of months now, but he's on a fresh feed. And it just makes such a difference. So that's really wonderful. So that that's the kind of easiest way to manage your dog's teeth if they're on a raw diet, because raw food, the minced raw food, is actually quite soft, and so there isn't much abrasion going on there. It's healthier than carbohydrate foods, like some cat foods have sugars added, so for palatability. So it's also healthier in the respect that it's helping general oral microbiome, and there's not sugar sitting there for opportunistic bacteria to grow. So it's beneficial in that respect, but it's also just easier if you're happy and comfortable to feed more meaty bones. But what happens if you're not? What happens if you're feeding a wet diet, and it's a good quality wet diet, but it may contain some rice, which is kind of basically sugar, and it contains there's nothing in there that is going to cause abrasion. So it's finding something that will stimulate your dog to lick and chew. If you're uncomfortable with raw meaty bones, there are several other options around. The more natural, the better. I don't use any kind of raw hidey type things. There are some lovely products now, like fur ears, which some dogs, depending on the size, will be really happy to chew on. I am not averse to an antler. Some people are very uncomfortable with these, and there's lots of stories of people breaking their dog's teeth on these hard chews, which they might do. I think it depends on the dog. So if the dog is determined to chew the bone down or the antler right down to very small pieces, then you're more likely to have a dog that's going to break a tooth on that. Some dogs are just pretty good at getting off the connective material and then walking away and leaving it. So it kind of depends a little bit on the risk of that, on how your dog behaves. If your dog isn't particularly interested, so say you can't feed raw meaty bones or you don't want to, or some dogs don't know what to do with a bone, they get very confused, and you want to try something like an antler or horn or whatever it might be, and they're not really interested in that, then I've used things like just smearing some coconut oil over the side of it. Might just get them into it, so they lick it and it's palatable to them and it gets them going, and then they start chewing on it, and then it becomes something that they're really comfortable with, and that's ideal. That will get them going again. There are several products out there. I guess the easiest way to determine whether they're any good or not is to ask some questions like, what's in this product? So how processed is it? How natural is it? What are the actual ingredients here? But also, how long is it taking my dog to chew it? So we're quite comfortable with giving dogs chews because we think that they're good for their teeth, but in my experience, those chews just do not last very long at all. It depends on the dog, but they can disappear in a few seconds. So there's no chew action actually going on at all. So asking yourself how long is the dog actually chewing on it versus what's in it is probably the best way to determine how good that effective that chew is at keeping your dog or cat's teeth clean. It has been proven by vets, and also obviously in the dental world, that there's a small World Small Animal Veterinary Association has a dental kind of guidelines which are really aimed at vets, but they do have some toolkits that are useful for owners, and it's worth looking at that website, WSAVA, and they have done some research, and cleaning dogs' teeth significantly reduces plaque and calculus accumulation over time. So if you are really not winning with these chews, you can't find something that's working for your dog, that your dog's interested in, that suits your way of feeding, and you're still worried about keeping those teeth healthy, then yeah, by all means, brushing the teeth is going to be ideal. You can get enzymatic toothpaste, so toothpaste which has got enzymes in which actively break down that. I would always say with brushing, you're going to be much more successful if you start with clean teeth. Getting off, large bits of plaque or calculus that is formed on there is going to be really difficult. Some dogs will let you crush the tartar off, actually, and there are some nurses that will have a go at doing that for you. I used to have it work for a great vet, an old Scottish vet, who's a farm vet, very practical guy, and you'd get the cats with these awful, pieces of plaque on their teeth the same size as the teeth, and he just had this massive, amazing method of flicking it off with a penny. So he'd hold the cat's head and flick along the side, and it would all come off as if you just spent £300 and done an anaesthetic. It was really, really effective. If some animals will let you do that, some vet nurses will be happy to try that, some may not be, but you can, you're literally just trying to break it down and remove it. It depends on the dog or cat again, obviously. But if you're starting with pretty clean teeth, then brushing is absolutely fine. It's a similar situation to us. So the more healthy, species appropriate foods you're feeding, the less plaque and tartar you're going to have building up, so the kind of more hope of winning. And obviously the younger the dog, the better it is to try and get them used to it, but you can teach a dog how to have their teeth cleaned. If your dog is really disturbed by it, then you need to just start really slow, lots of positive reinforcement, but just touching the toothbrush with the mouth, and then you touching the teeth with your fingers, come away, and really spend some time. So you might want to take 6 weeks, 3 months to very, very slowly introduce your dog to the concept of having their teeth cleaned. The WSAVA website does have a little toolkit that tells you how to go about that. That might be worth looking at if you're interested in starting. And you can get, doggy toothbrushes that just help get you right to the back. It's the same things that you're going to have with, from your dental hygiene, but dogs' mouths are quite long. It depends on the breed. And if you've got a brachiocephalic breed, so a dog that's got a short muzzle, you really have to be very careful. I mean, we used to see Yorkies as well and poodles. We used to see by far the highest majority of animals in for dentals were those poodles, Yorkie dogs that had just very small mouths. That the brachiocephalic breeds, they have a lot of what's the word? Well, they're not particularly sitting straight, so it's crowding in their teeth. So you have to be very careful and be really mindful with those dogs, and do clean their teeth and try and start from a young age. Building up, to getting into a routine of doing it 2 or 3 times a week. Hopefully it becomes like a positive thing and not a stressful issue, but there is help available if you need that. Again, if you've got clean teeth, there is a really nice product around that contains seaweed. So seaweed is really interesting. So it's there's an enzyme in the seaweeds that help to break down the plaque and the tartar, and also just the kind of inflammation. It's quite anti-inflammatory in the mouth as well. So the only kind of issue with that is that seaweed contains iodine and minerals, and the minerals are wonderful, but iodine is a nutrient that we have to be a bit mindful of with dogs and cats that might have thyroid issues. So we often add kelp or seaweed into a fresh food diet to increase the iodine and maybe increase the amount of thyroid hormone that's produced. So iodine is necessary to create thyroid hormone. Now, in dogs, they tend to have a low thyroid issue, hypothyroidism, if there's a problem there. So adding a little bit of seaweed for dental care is particularly going to cause an issue, but it may do in cats more because they suffer from hyper, so high thyroid. And actually those cats will want to be feeding quite a low iodine diet too. So by adding in a seaweed dental supplement to the food every day, you are actually taking away that iodine level and making it a little bit near the top end of normal or near the maximum range for cats. So that's something to be aware of. And if you're feeding a fresh food diet and adding in kelp plus using a dental, seaweed-based product, then you probably don't need to do the two of them. So it's just something that you should be aware of, really. So yeah, really in summary, we need to definitely think about our pets' oral health. It's something that is a real reflection of how the diet is suiting them, of their oral microbiome, which kind of gives you a clue as to how their digestive microbiome might be. We need to be feeding fresh species appropriate feeds to reduce the kind of accumulation of plaque and tartar and to help the oral microbiome. Giving a broad spectrum probiotic will probably cover you off with a couple of the beneficial bacteria that are really useful for they're very useful for digestive issues, and you see those around, and we recommend there's an awful lot, but they do tend to contain a couple of those species that are really good in your oral microbiome as well. So that's really worth remembering. And then so thinking about chewing, whatever works for you and your dog. So raw bones, antlers, toys, some toys using things like coconut oil to get them going on it. And if that really isn't working for you, then using brushes. You'll see quite a lot of dental biscuits. They've got things like mint and parsley. Again, I don't think they're massively effective. If you've got an issue with your dog's breath, then you need to address the issue, which is either a poor microbiome that's coming from the stomach, or it's something wrong with the teeth there. You need to check that. And then, so chewing is really useful, finding whatever works for your dog, or brushing if that's what you need to do. I'm not one for, I'd much rather your dog sat outside in the sunshine chewing on something enjoyed and releasing the endorphins and the mental stimulation that comes with that than stressfully trying to clean their teeth 2 or 3 times a week. Cats chew, this all applies to cats. Cats do quite well on chicken wings. Raw chicken wings, my cat will eat. My cat's a hunter, so he has actually pretty good teeth anyway, and he's on a very good feed. But cats, encouraging them to chew, it can be more difficult, but actually they absolutely will eat raw chicken wings if that sort of stimulates them. And then also, just coming back to being mindful of the breed and how much you need to really think about it. And the thing is, we get these dogs and it's not a problem when they're young because everything's new and shiny in there, and then by the time they're like 3 or 4, you start to see an issue, and we want to get in there before that's happened. And let's try and avoid dental treatment, but if you do have to have it done, let's not do it again. So make the most of those teeth being really clean and implement those changes at that time. And being aware of now looking at the packs of whatever might be the dental products. So whether it's a dental chew, how long does it take your dog or cat to chew it for? What's in it? Is there actual food in it, or is this just full of chemicals? Asking yourselves those questions. And then if it's a biscuit or a seaweed-based product, actually I'm giving kelp, or my cat's hypothyroid, I don't really want to be using a seaweed-based product. And that's really kind of gives you an overview. And again, just to remind you that it's not just about having a nice white pearly smile and clean breath. It's actually really important for systemic overall health. So there are links between kidney disease and gingivitis, heart disease. It's very easy to find information on this in people online, and I'm sure it's more relatable to dogs and cats as well. So I hope that's been useful. If you have any questions, or you want to kind of get to grips with your dog's dental health or your cat's dental health, then you know where to find us. mypetnutritionist.com, and we look forward to hearing from you, and by all means share your success stories. I love a before and after, when especially if you've had a dog on like a raw bone or something like that. That's really wonderful. To see the difference is quite remarkable. Okay, thank you very much for listening.